Okay, real talk, video games. How the fuck do they exist? I mean, you can make a fucking universe with characters and you can put it on a disc and sell it. Fucking witchcraft. I can't even get a fucking dog to talk and you're telling me you can make a video game. Would I want a dog to talk though?
It's trying to get closer to you.
My best friend's gone because of you and your stupid racism.
I'm all about world building. As a big believer in the power of storytelling, it's the thing I focus on the most in game design, and I believe it can truly elevate a good game into a great one. Not so much in a, oh, look at all these amazing cutscenes, so much of the story, beautiful, but more so in how the game is constructed, how the core mechanics are framed for a living environment, staged specifically to keep the player involved. It's why games share more in common with theatre than movies, but you know, that's like a whole other video, man, and that is one can of worms, let me tell you.
Can you bleed that radiator while you're there?
If there was anyone who understood this on the most basic level, it was Insomniac. Previously, I did a video on how they managed this with the Ratchet series, tying together an active universe and a package of consumerist satire, before it all went, you know, wrong. But that wasn't their first stab at the genre, instead beginning with a whimsical little series of platformers for the PS1. Yes, you've guessed it, it's that legendary scaly hero. It's Croc! Nah mate, it's a fucking joke.
I will of course be playing Spyro, cause it's my not Y1 game.
The Spyro series allegedly never sold quite as well as Crash, but in terms of scope, it was really going above and beyond. It was developed in that golden period where Mark Kearney was pushing people at Sony to seriously rival what was happening elsewhere, with both Mario 64 and then Banjo-Kazooie being tentpole figures in the exploratory platforming genre. With the benefit of hindsight, Spyro was set to focus on elements they were not, mostly enemy interaction. It really delivered on that, and you get a dreamlike series of fantasy stages where the player can mess around with the cheeky beasties. Oh, I should have probably rewritten that. I think this actually sets Spyro 1 completely apart from the series, and it's probably worth a dissection in a video in its own right. Anyway, geography was an important part of development too. Impressions of space were especially created for the project to show off the hardware and encourage exploration. The only issue being that there was very little peripheral detail to add to the experience. Felt very empty. There were plenty of dragons to interact with, but they were essentially props the player was rewarded with, rather than characters who really made the space feel lived in. And their dialogue was pretty, how do I put this nicely? Well, shit.
You are a good glider, eh, Spyro?
I was born to glide.
But then along comes Spyro 2. And this is where the video becomes why Spyro 2 is so fucking solid at world building, oh my god. I still can't quite wrap my mind around just how much I enjoy the way Spyro 2's world is constructed. 3 is obviously bigger, but 2 has a lot more subtle work done in order to bring the whole picture into focus, the contextualization helping firm up the gameplay. It's nothing horrendously special, but it's very easy to appreciate given how many platformers just don't do this stuff. The game opens up with Spyro wanting to visit somewhere more exotic, and that in his rush to go on vacation, he ends up in the magical world of Avalar. Already we're getting a sense that location is going to play a big role, with the expectations of the original thrown off slightly. Heroes and villains are quickly established, and then you're thrown straight into the action. Right off the bat, Glimmer exemplifies the refined nature of Spyro 2's design. We have a much more defined point of entry with an NPC figure to clue us in. Enemies aren't just interacting with Spyro, but with the world around them. Every inch of space contains some obstacle or point of interest, with a clear indication that there's more to do here than meets the eye. Our save points are contextualized by a likable character. Our gem usage is contextualized by a—
No! God, please, no!
It's also a great idea to open it with a bit of Spyro series lore. Gems are, after all, Spyro mainstays. It's a really well considered opening level, and orientates the player perfectly. There's no bottomless pits, no water, no long range enemies. It's good. As you go along, you see that instead of an overarching theme between levels within a hub world, there are individual communities with very specific problems Spyro must solve by level's end. The variety of species you encounter are doubled, as is the effort put into the architecture of individual locations. There's a Zelda-like enjoyment to be had uncovering areas you couldn't previously access, or seeing how a strange object or idea will relate to a mission you'll be given later. Spyro's abilities now allow him greater maneuverability. He can even explore entire levels underwater. The hub worlds are nicely contrasted by being these peaceful, take-a-breather monolithic citadels, and the music inside them is just, oh, baby.
This is where Mozart would be jumping out of his grave and saying, I want to live in this century. They pay me for this.
Characters are way more present, and so is a sense of humour. Spyro has a band of friends who come to rely on him, who you not only see in cutscenes, but can even find in the hub worlds and levels, all going out of their way to make sure you can complete the quest. They serve as benchmarks for key experiences such as save points, movesets, and level access. The fact you can sometimes find them in a level looking for help is a great way to see their personalities in action, instead of just because of what you've been told about them. Part of the reason Moneybags is such a gut reaction from fans is that you experience his shitty practices firsthand when he takes your hard-earned cash. But don't worry, we'll all be sorry come the flood. Speaking of monsters, the bosses are characters the game builds expectations for throughout. They're no more generic than the bosses in Spyro 1, but their telegraphed presence give the player a much more tangible connection to them, and an idea of the threats ahead. Ripto presiding over his henchmen as they fight you is a really nice touch, giving you an incentive to move past the bigger obstacle to eventually reach the mastermind. All of these simple touches work wonders. Rather than just helping the story and tutorials along, it validates the experience of journeying with this cast in particular. You're much more aware of how beneficial or attractive these interactions are, and how much your involvement resolves these issues. The fact so much of it is in real time thanks to dynamic character interaction is not difficult to love. Well, unless I'm forgetting something. Oh.
Trouble with the trolley, eh?
However, Spyro's explicit world building is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot going on in the game's foundation which shows the level of consideration given well beyond the original. It plants a great deal of throwaway framing throughout the game to ensure the player feels a connection from world to world. Avalar comprises of a lot of disparate ideas and level choices, yet feels very much part of the same region, a lot of which comes down to what's happening in the details. There's a lot of repeated motifs, characters mention worlds beyond their own.
It is urgent. He has our tickets to tonight's hockey game in Colossus Valley.
You may have even had the sneaking suspicion that some of the worlds are directly twinned to one another, and it turns out you'd be right. In an article which is, it's just gone.
How embarrassing!
Someone had acted upon similar hunches suggested in the game's design and dialogue. At first it was suspected that the game may have been somewhat rushed. The hub worlds are all named after the seasons, but there are only 3. Summer, autumn, and winter, with spring mysteriously missing. The second world houses 2 speedways, and talismans also disappear in the final hub world's levels, again all suggesting that content was removed and compressed. Instead, people discovered this was by design, as were the reuse of character models and enemy types. The most obvious example occurs around the second homeworld, if you place Skelos Badlands and Crystal Glaciers. They are clearly ice and fire analogues of each other, both featuring the same Jurassic theme and characters. It gets more involved in the Breeze Harbor and Zephyr levels, where the enemies in the respective worlds are the NPCs in the other.
Those darn birds in Zephyr never paid me for all the bombs and TNT barrels I gave them.
Both aren't even simply just recolored models, they have original enemy types in the opposing world. Then there's a slip-up when, at the end of the Romeo and Juliet mission in Zephyr, a landlubber refers to the level Colossus as Colossus Springs. We all thought it was just a mistake, but someone discovered that, within the game's code, this was indeed the original level title for the Idle Springs world. It then transpired that this wasn't the only level with its name changed. From then on it becomes pretty obvious. We'd already guessed that Metropolis was directly related to Robotica Farms, with the animals from the farm having overrun the level while the farm is dealing with a bug infestation. The same goes for Sunny Beach and Aquaria Towers, both featuring the Waterworker opponents. But what wasn't immediately clear is that Cloud Temples overlooks Mystic Marsh, that Scorch is the area surrounding Shady Oasis, or that Idle Springs is at the base of the mountains of Colossus. Glimmer and Hurricos appear to be the only worlds with no twins, perhaps because they came from the Scrap Spring homeworld. However, one is suggested to bring electrical power to the entire nation, while the other is the wellspring from which all the collectible gems come from, so they're pretty well covered in their overall contribution. So what benefit does knowing any of this serve? Ultimately, I think it's really telling of why Avalar as a region feels so investable. Conflicts within worlds have a clear connection to a twinned world, all providing a constant sense of forward momentum in bringing the land into harmony. Somebody made all these characters and levels, and the player is rewarded for paying attention to how they intertwine. Laughs can be had from recognition of how elements fit together, and the geography of the game becomes much easier to realise beyond the non-Euclidean nature of the portals. It emboldens you to stop the person who made the mess to begin with. This gives the final confrontation the added weight of all the experience you have behind you, not to mention the fact that orbs are used during the battle. Makes your newfound obsession with them once the talismans are out of the picture feel very justified. Even then, we're not done capping off the experience yet. Spyro 2 hits the jackpot when it comes to closure thanks to its bonus world, Dragon Shores. Not only are you finally presented with the very place you set out for originally, but with the very image you were fighting for, the world of Avalar in harmony. A fairground with the characters you saved as well as the ones you wanted some payback against. Spyro ends the adventure on a real high note, and Avalar has never seemed more alive as a result. Now that's how you end it, man. Where the fuck were you when I needed you, Crash 2? You fucking failed me. Farting around in space, what a shit boss. So that's Spyro 2's way of dealing with world building, and I love it. But I'd be remiss not to mention 3 before winding down, which obviously had to carry the torch before Insomniac moved on. Despite being rushed to deadline due to coinciding with the Chinese New Year at the time, in many ways 3 is bigger, bolder, and better. Fun fact, I was convinced this was a party game when I saw the cover as a kid, so just imagine my excitement when I realised this was just more Spyro 2. It's almost as though they knew how much I like the interaction in 2. Because in 3, the interactions in the hubs are made much more overt. NPCs can sometimes be found locked outside of their homeworlds. When you beat a level, the NPC will then be found working with the others to build your transport to the boss. It's just so nice seeing a council of characters come together to help you with your problem, and it makes the hub feel so much more accessible and lived in. The fact that this is all just simple, optional detail is really impressive even now. There's so many nice little touches like that, from Bianca gloating over you in the homeworlds, to this chicken turning up, to the fact you can plug in an extra controller to play this minigame with a friend. We even get some serious closure for something that Spyro 2 started, and God bless him.
Money, 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 motherfucker.
Alas, it doesn't share all the perks. There's no interconnecting geography to speak of between worlds, and the final secret stage is just a couple of strangely made challenges with little sense of space. The bosses aren't characters you get to really know, bar the very last one. It's fun, but in terms of finality, it's like, yeah, alright. Now that's not to say that Spyro 3 isn't great, in fact it's pretty excellent, but Spyro 2 gave way more consideration to its fictional community than it had any right to. The focus is not on what the player can achieve for themselves, but what they achieve for everyone else, and I think that's something the 3D platformer got very right back in the day. That's why we have those cute little cutscenes before and after the levels, and why everyone else has dramatic moments and personalities over our hero. Even in 3, it's not Spyro who the narrative really contributes to. Spyro 2 is an incredibly simple game that feels so much richer thanks to these decisions, and it's a big part of why I find myself booting it up again from time to time. I love walking around Avalar and taking in the surroundings, reminding myself how it felt to be surprised level to level, to feel like part of a community. I don't know what's in Spyro's future, but with a formula to work with like this? Well, shit, how could anybody screw that up?
Oh, you go fishing? That's kind of weird though, since you're a fish.
Team up and fly anytime as living and breathing weapons of explosive destruction.
We got us a portal! That can get us back to Skylands.
Fuck me, games are dead. Thanks for watching, gang. Give the other vids a cheeky click. Maybe check some of my gaming buds if you haven't already, they're really good people. I'll be back to talk about more baby games. Oh my god, such timely content. I'm gonna get gone. Bye.
I'm just worried about my friends. Dr. Cortex was about to begin his takeover of our world at the very moment I got sucked away here in the Skylands.
Super Marsupial, the wonder from down under, the rocket with a pocket.